Hey, what's up? This is Mick from Slipknot. Sit in your room and practice for 8 hours a day. You better lose all your friends and don't go out. Don't start drinking until after you get famous. And practice. Believe me. First of all, one thing I like to do for warming up would be to run through, your major, minor, diminished arpeggios. You can do different types of sequencing. And so on and so forth. So you try that. One more time. Yeah, sometimes I will switch. When I'm picking, I won't necessarily alternate pick everything or sweep everything. It depends on what you want to go into next is the way you should set yourself up. You know, if you know where you're going, sometimes you go from an alternate pick into, like, say, down pick twice in a row, depending on how you're setting yourself up to go into whatever you're going to go into. I suggest for practicing, you try both ways. Strict alternate picking. Use strict alternate picking, and then also, sometimes doing, a sweep just with two strings is a more efficient way, to play a phrase. So I would say practice. Practice very strict with alternate picking, but then, you can cheat anytime you like to, really. Right. Um, about practicing, I never really practiced. That's the thing is, very little bits. I did a lot more practicing once I started teaching. We'd go through exercises, and it would force me to spend more time doing things like that. A lot of it was just experimenting. I would get books, magazines, and see things, and listen to records and see things, and um, try to figure them out. There's a lot of great things to practice. I mean, and it's all been done a million times. You can sequence scales. I mean, I mean, there's a million different variations of sequences you can do with scales when it comes to practicing. And then there's also the 24 permutations of the 1, 2, 3, 4 finger pattern. I used to play around with those a lot. And sometimes you can do different things for finger stretches. Something that's not very musical, like recording. Something it's not musical, but it causes your fingers to stretch really far. Things like that are kind of outside sounding. And if you get the fingers, if you can stretch for it enough. Okay. Stretch your fingers out, make your things move. No, absolutely, absolutely. I absolutely recommend when you're practicing. I mean, I see a lot of people, sit like this when they're practicing. What you will notice is that your body is under tension. So automatically, there's stress on your right arm. There's stress on your left arm. Your left arm is out, so it's not just relaxed. Naturally, I mean, to be relaxed, we just sit like this. But now it's under pressure, which is putting tension on your hands. Same thing with your picking. If you're turned, you're picking, it's all up here. If you sit in the classical position, a lot of times I'll put my feet, like one foot down, my other foot on top, just to make a stool. You can also buy a classical stand. A lot of shops have those. A little footstool. You can use anything, a brick, whatever you happen to have handy. Maybe your dog sleeps on the floor. So, I always sit, guitar centered, so that way there's no tension. Your hand just comes up, thumb on the back of the neck, like perpendicular to the way it runs, right? Allows your fingers to arch. That way, you can cover, say, in the fifth position, you can cover anything right there. Playing on your fingertips with your fingers arched, trying to keep the edge of your hand close to the fretboard. I know sometimes I don't, and I come off, and cheat. But when you're practicing, it's really important, I think, to try not to develop, if you have any bad habits you've developed, to spend some time, practicing like that, run through scales. using proper technique. And like I said, when it comes to tension, my right arm is free and loose, right? And I don't have to concentrate on, where I'm putting it as much, because it's a much more relaxed position. And it allows less effort, really, to achieve what you want to play. Same with your left hand. There's no tension. It's just my fingers are in a very natural position, and there's no pressure on my arm at all. So I don't know. To me, that's the best way to practice. And if you use good technique, I use bad technique all the time, but learn the rules and then break them. That's kind of my attitude. Right. With speed picking, you can basically take anything, and the simpler the better. Really, if you're working on just to practice to develop your right hand, you don't have to be running scales, because a lot of times the limitation with very fast playing is the left hand doesn't want to keep up. But if you work on, basically you want to work on tremolo picking, and it's especially effective if you have a metronome. That way, you have like a steady cadence. And you can obviously do patterns of threes, patterns of fours, but try not to mix them. I see there's a lot of fast bands that will play, the line, they won't be like down, 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 right? Like, if you're doing fours, you want to be hitting it down, down, right? Well, you can just like that, just like random notes, random patterns, and just sit and grind for a while. You can just do that, for as long as you can, and start slower, work your way up. But like I said, with a metronome, it makes everything much easier. It's much more consistent. You can tell. You don't have to rely on your own internal timing to tell you that you're on tempo. And it's just, if you spend 5 minutes a day with that, after even 2 weeks, you're going to really notice that your right hand has picked up a lot, especially when it comes to endurance. If you hold on to that, and it will start to burn. I mean, you'll start to feel it, and try to play through that. Try to sit and play through that burn, and then you'll notice, day by day, the burn drops and your endurance increases. It's just like being a runner. You go out and one day you can run a mile, and it's more labored. Do it a few times, and everything becomes much more efficient. So that's something that you don't even have to have anything with your left hand going on. Just set a cadence with your right hand. Also, I tend to change my pick attack when I'm playing very fast. A lot of times I'll anchor my ring finger and my third finger to the body and allow it to pivot. And it supports. It's a nice base that allows me to, because when you're playing fast, you don't want like a large stroke. You want to tighten that picking pattern up. Also, I use Jim Dunlop Jazz 3 picks that are sharp, so there's just a very fine point, and it really allows you to be precise. It goes exactly where you want. So what you want to do is you don't want a lot of arm movement. Like you'll see, you can't really get much speed going. thing you can do is then start working on going back and forth between strings. They're going to be very conscious. Run patterns of threes and patterns of fours. But be conscious of always hitting. When you're doing four, make sure that when you change strings, you're still hitting a down. You're like. Things like that, and then you can work on changing strings and being very precise. You grind here, move over and back, and basically you want to keep a very tight pattern. And each guitar is going to feel different. With the string spacing that's kind of wide, it's even easier to do on a more narrow neck, in my opinion. So anyway. So that had a little more focus, not so much on the lead aspect, but rhythm with really fast picking. Slipknot is one little aspect. I think most musicians have a lot of different things to offer, and no one band ever gets all of that out. You'll see little bits and little things, because to be an effective band, you need to be a bunch of different people that contribute and create something that is the whole and not like the one person. Let me see. something. It's a kind of we don't use much stuff like that with Slipknot. Also, this is tuned to E, and in Slipknot we tuned down to B. So, totally different kind of sound. I don't really play much legato. Yeah, I mean, I can. I prefer to pick most of my notes. I like. I mean, obviously, legato has it's just one of many voices. It's a technique that achieves a certain kind of sound that, sometimes you want to use it. I tend to be more straightforward with picking. It's just I don't know. I like the attack of picking every single note. It's also to me a little more of a challenge. I mean, you have to synchronize, both hands, and both hands have to be up to the same level. You have to be balanced. I mean, that way you can't just, get going really fast. I mean, I would always, like, if I was going to use that, I'd be like, I would prefer to pick, something like that. One thing I like to do is combine, like minor with diminished. One thing I like to do with arpeggios is like start in the basement really low and then really high. Something like. So you're covering a lot of ground. I mean, just playing 3 notes. I mean, you've got. That's another technique. Sweeping technique is more like circle picking. You can also do it in between two strings like. Yeah, if you're going back and forth, in such a tight area, it's not gonna be very fluid. So it's one thing we work on called circle picking, where it's more of the smooth rotation of the right hand to make the notes kind of blend together a little more smooth. Well, no, I mean that's kind of endless. I mean, there's all sorts of different things you can do. One thing I like to do, diminished thing, it's kind of a string skipping and sliding. It has a very interesting sound. You can cover a lot of ground really quickly with it. Really slippery. You can do a lot of different things too. Is you can take, just even fragments of scales, and string skip and slide and shift, and it has a really, like I said, I don't play much legato type stuff, but if you do a lot of straightforward picking and you throw something in like that, it sounds very slippery, and it kind of weaves, makes things a little more interesting. I also like to do a lot of pedal point stuff. Like.